How did you feel about Rodney Harrison coming out strongly saying no Drake Maye? 2, what do you think becomes of Eliot Wolf after his contract expires, which I believe is in May? 2 May questions.
Ironic.
1, I don't even know. I maybe should have looked it up. I don't even know. I didn't hear about Rodney Harrison saying anything about May. To be totally honest, I respect Rodney Harrison. I do not think that he's like sitting up watching film and scouting these prospects, especially quarterbacks. Like, I'm sorry. I know a lot of these guys operate. It's like they'll watch enough. They have researchers who do some of the work for them and give them the numbers and, you know, all that good stuff. But see, the quote was, there's no way I'm spending the number 3 pick overall on Drake Maye. There's no way. If you're saying there's no way, I don't think he watched him. I'm just going to be totally honest. It's the same thing if you're saying, like, even for me, as much as I like him, I will always acknowledge there are flaws. And there are things you need to be worried about. I'm not saying, oh my God, why wouldn't you want Drake Maye? If you don't, I'm like, no, I get it. But he's my guy. Like, I'm riding for him. I don't care if I'm wrong. This is what I believe based on what I've seen. There needs to be some nuance in that discussion. So I think that immediately disqualifies. If you're like, no, there's no way. Or yes, absolutely. What are you thinking? I think that's like not really fair. There has to be some nuance. And with Wolf, I think he gets re-signed. Like, this is a guy where people in the league are saying the Patriots are lucky to have him. And they are. They're very lucky he didn't jump ship once it got kind of clear that Belichick was taking power away from people and not really giving them opportunities. Even if they do hold some kind of interviews or whatever, maybe Eliot Wolf leads the charge and he's like, no, I just want somebody who can, you know, be a consultant, be my right-hand man, something in that department. But especially if the draft goes well, I think it would be absolutely wild if, while it does make sense because he's been the one who's leading everything since last year. So the draft is kind of the culmination of those things. So it's not like, you know, this draft goes well and it's like, well, the continuity. It's like, no, things pretty much reset because then you start working on the next year. But yeah, everything he brings and the knowledge he has and the connections, the fact that he helped build your coaching staff on offense. Those are all Eliot Wolf's guys, and they're almost all reputable coaches who have a good track record in the league. Obviously also goes through Van Pelt, but that familiarity was a big part of it. So, yeah, I don't think it would make much sense to move on from him unless he botches this draft.
Yeah, so the Rodney stuff, quickly, there's this, it's a talking head thing, and I mean, that's the business we're in, right? Sometimes we have to be talking heads and try and do things. I don't want to say it's for money or for clicks, but there's a
time sometimes.
There's like, you got to entertain, right? There's this, it's the circle of content, and you know what we live in right now. And so for Rodney to say that, if he hits, everybody knows Rodney Harrison said Drake Maye stunk, and then he gets to be known as the guy who said Drake Maye stunk, and he was right. Same with Merrill Hodge, who in the past hit on Johnny Manziel. Everybody goes back to that because Merrill Hodge, right? And we still remember it. If he hits on Drake Maye, we still remember it. And so, and if Drake Maye is really good, nobody really cares what Rodney Harrison would say. So sometimes you take these swings at these things, right? That's my read on the Harrison and Maye thing.
Testing my skills on Prize Picks this season is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $1,000 with just a few taps. Use the code CLNS for the first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code CLNS and get $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed.
As far as Eliot Wolf, he's going to be here. I honestly, my belief on this is, and this is just an opinion, if they want to hire a general manager and name someone their general manager, they're required to do an external search. Because you can't just elevate from within. You have to apply by the Rooney Rule. You have to bring in guys outside. You can't just name Eliot Wolf your general manager. If they want to do that, they have to hold interviews. And that's what I think it's going to end up being. I think it's going to be a process to eventually give Eliot Wolf the GM title. Now, they didn't want to do this right after the season because they turned this thing over very, very fast. As you know, we went to Bill Belichick's thing on a Thursday, and they announced Gerard Mayo as the head coach on a Friday. And they said, we're using who's here right now and starting our draft process. So I think they trust Wolf. They couldn't name him GM yet. They used what was in the building. They immediately started that transition of power from Bill to Mayo and Wolf. Mayo had it written in his contract that he could be the GM or the head coach rather, so they didn't have to do external hires, Rooney Rule, stuff like that. They have to abide by it by Wolf because that wasn't in his contract. Now, after the draft, they reset, they open it up, and they potentially name Eliot Wolf the GM. I think that's what it is. I could be wrong, but that's been my sort of read on it this entire time. I think he's going to be back in May.
The Rooney Rule is a great point. Honestly, one that I forget because it feels like it's never brought up, even though when people do talk about the Wolf situation, it's just like, oh, why haven't they given him a title yet?
Right.
And this isn't the old regime where Mayo said, I think titles matter because if you do move on from us, we want people to know what you did. So you have that on your resume because he did head coaching searches and he went to interviews. And I'm sure it was hard for him to be like, yeah, it was my defense. It just didn't have a name on it where everybody assumes it's Bill's defense. And obviously Bill has final say, gives his thoughts because why wouldn't you want to listen to what Bill Belichick has to say about your defense? But Bill is a head coach. There's only so much time he has to actually look at one side of the ball. He's really looking at it at a macro perspective.
Right.
Whereas Gerard was the one who was leading meetings and talking to players and helping build game plans with Steve Belichick. So Steve. I have total brain fart. But yeah, going back to it, the Rooney Rule is a very good point because I don't even know if they're allowed to name him the general manager without a search. And then
they have to do an external search. And that takes up time. Yeah, right. No, that's fine. That would have just taken up more time at the beginning of this thing where they were able to turn it around. Like I said, they were able to turn around quick with Mayo, flip the switch, start their draft process, start the quarterbacks. They wanted it to be Wolf probably, but they weren't able to do it again because that would have just taken up time. So again, that's been my read on it, and I think that's what's going to end up happening.